Puerto Rico. My Zoom chat is going all over. So if I miss you, I'm sorry. Turkey, Boston. I love the East Coast representation, the West Coast representation, the international representation. Jersey, love it.
Yeah, all over.
Turkey. I know it
Turkey,
really is all over. APAC is a little
Pakistan,
hard at this time, but we get that. We totally get that.
yeah, Paris. Ooh, yeah, one of my favorite cities.
Irvine, love it. Close to me. Paris, so nice. India, we got an India. I was wrong, Jason. We got some APAC representation.
Love it, love it.
Love it, love it, love it. Okay, I'm going to continue admitting all, and then we're also going to get into it. So, hello. Nice to meet everyone. I'm Sally. This is Jason on the call. We're going to be talking to you about how to work with senior leaders. Okay, so the big thing here is we're not going to talk to you in like a fluffy, generic way that you might see on LinkedIn, right? What we're going to try to do is how do we think through working with senior leaders so that it helps us land the project that we've been chasing, helps us build this trust that we want with executives, and not just like little T trust, but like big T trust. And then also puts us on the path to helping us get to the next level of our career faster. Because let's be honest, right? Like, we don't just want to do good work. That's not why we're here. That's not why we're showing up at 8 a.m. or 11 a.m. or whatever the time is in other places. Like, we want to be seen as someone who leaders trust, who bet on, and then also bring into the room. And there's a lot of chatter, especially on LinkedIn, around like how to work with senior leaders, right? People are going to say, oh, be more strategic, speak up more, drive alignment, do all of these types of things. And that's cool. But what does it actually look like in real conversations? Jason and I believe that it comes down to one thing. You need to communicate in a way that shows your impact without wasting their time. And I think that part is the most important point, without wasting their time. And it sounds simple, but we know that it's really not. Because here's the messy truth. You're trying to sound smart, but then you end up over explaining. Or you speak up, but then nothing sticks. Or you prepare everything and you still feel like it's not landing. And I don't know if you've ever felt that. I have felt that multiple times. I still do sometimes. And when you're in that moment when like your update falls flat, or when someone else gets the credit or the momentum, or you're stuck thinking, what am I doing wrong? I think that is one of the most worst places that you can be in a professional job, because it just goes against all of the things that you've spent so much time doing. And you're like, how do I just make this stick? I don't know about you, Jason, but I used to treat every update sort of like a book report, right? It's over detailed, over prepared, and honestly, it's probably completely forgettable. But the people who stand out, they're not necessarily louder, right? They're not even necessarily more senior. They're just communicating in a way that makes leaders say, I trust them. And so today, Jason and I are going to break that down for you. How do we filter out noise? How do we speak in a way that actually drives decisions? And how do we earn trust and not just airtime? And if you're feeling stuck or overlooked, this might be the reason why. The good news is that it's something that you can learn and practice. So let's get into it. So to start off, why listen to me and Jason? Well, the image on the left, maybe you're right, my left. This is me at 11 years old. And I used to think that being helpful, hardworking, and saying yes was the key to getting ahead. This is just what I was taught as like the elder daughter of Asian immigrants. And it worked well for me when I was in school. I became the go-to person, the workhorse, the one who can always deliver. But that didn't necessarily translate when I entered the corporate job. I wasn't the one that always reached my career goals, right? It wasn't like early promotion was something that I was always getting. And I was not the one that always got invited into the room. And I just couldn't figure out why. And I was doing everything right. But what I didn't realize was I wasn't being seen as a leader. I was being seen as the reliable one, the one who would always keep things moving, not the one that people would necessarily take a big bet on. They trusted me to execute, but not to lead. And that's because I didn't know how to communicate the value that I brought. I was giving updates, but not driving decisions. I was trying to be helpful, but not communicating to be trusted. And once I started to see that by learning what are people doing around me who are more successful, not necessarily more smart, not necessarily harder workers, but more successful, that is when everything changed. And that is my why for why I help people like you all who are here today break the patterns that we're raised with. Stay humble, don't brag, don't ask for too much. Make sure that your work speaks for itself, and replace them with honestly, step by step, what do we do in order to be seen, to be heard, and to be trusted? So that's sort of the whole premise of why it is that I do what I do. And today I'm at Google, I've been there for 12 years, acting like a chief of staff scaled operations capacity. Okay, Jason, I'm gonna pass it off to you.
Perfect. This is a photo of me when I was 5 years old. I'm just kidding. I chose a current photo. But why do I do this? It's really to pay it forward, to help the next crop of future leaders and managers. And frankly, I really enjoy thought-provoking life and career discussions with people. That's what I find intellectually stimulating. Currently, I'm the chief operating officer at Level Up. It's with Ethan Effins. He's a retired Amazon VP. He was there for 15 plus years. He's my business partner. I am also ex-Amazon. I am also an ex-startup founding team, and have the permanent battle scars to prove it. It is truly an up and down roller coaster ride. We raised $8 million on a PowerPoint deck, no product. This was during the ZERP era. And then occasionally I like to serve on the advisory board, and mentor a lot of startup founders and people earlier in their career. I will say something that Sally said earlier resonated with me, because I was having this discussion with someone else earlier, and it was, why do people get nervous, especially when speaking with executives? And nervousness is an output, and something we landed on was what Sally said. People try to want to come across as an expert or very smart. As a result, they just blah, 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 and they give over context. Anytime you catch yourself speaking and you use words like, and this happened, and then this happened, and then let me tell you about this, that's too much. So over speaking and over context leads to nervousness and then blabbing. The other part I'll share about senior leaders and executives is they usually share two types of traits. One is, we all know, they're super busy, but the second one is they tend to be quite impatient. And it could be because they're busy, but always keep that in mind, right? So they're impatient. So anytime you can get to the point quickly and give their time back, do it. Okay, so that's it for this slide. Let's kick it off.
I love that, Jason. And I totally agree with you. The one thing I'll add on to that too is I feel like the more senior you get, also the less capacity they have for this noise, because to your point, they're busy. But it's like the higher you go up in the ranks, the more that becomes more and more true. And I'm sure many of us, our goal is not to stay at the level we're at, it's to continue going on. So thank you for sharing that, Jason. Okay, so I love this visual because of the middle, right? It's like, what the heck happens in this middle? It's like this jumbled line of how do we actually go from someone who's talking to be heard to actually being someone who's communicating to be trusted. And most people, by the way, they think that their problem is visibility, right? But the real issue is they're trying to be heard, not communicating to be trusted, which is one of the things that Jason was talking about. So let me ask you this. Have you ever left a meeting thinking, I spoke up, but why didn't it land? Or I gave all the context, so why didn't they follow through? And it sucks when you do that kind of stuff. It sucks when you start questioning your own voice and wondering if maybe you should have said more or said it differently or not said anything at all. But here's the truth. It's not about confidence. It's actually just about clarity. And when you're clear, that leads to more and more confidence so that you stop over explaining, so that you stop going through like this textbook, I first did this and then that, all the things that Jason was talking about. Because at the end of the day, what I think Jason and I are both leading into is that leadership is not going to reward any of the effort we put in, right? They reward signal, and specifically signal that helps them make decisions faster. So here's the difference. Talking to be heard sounds like, let me show you how much I know. Let me explain all the context so that they see all the work that I did. But communicating to be trusted sounds like, here's what's happening, here's why it matters, and here's what I recommend we do next. That's not about performance, it's just clarity. And that's what these people want. One of the things that Jason does is he is the CEO to Ethan Evans. And I'm going to call him out for a second because Ethan I've taken his course. And one of the things Ethan does is he asks everyone to ask live questions. And if you provide too much context, he provides live coaching in that moment where he calls you out on that. And that is the type of stuff that is good for us to know. Because if we talk forever, if we go on and on, we totally miss the point. And that's the type of stuff that makes senior leaders stop actually listening to us. So let's get into how we actually think through the things that we were told growing up, and then also how things are actually So most people approach senior leaders the wrong way. And it's not because we're not smart, it's not because we're not capable, but it's because we've been taught the wrong rules. These are the lies that high performers quietly carry into like leadership conversations that we have, whether it's on Zoom, whether it's over Slack, whether it's an email, whether it's live or anything like that, right? And it's costing us visibility, trust, and also traction. So let's break them down one by one. And by the way, these are all things that I faced or things that Jason have faced when working with executives. So misunderstanding number one, execs want detailed updates to see how hard I'm working. You've probably heard this one. Make sure they see all the context, show your work. That's what we were taught in grade school, right? Like treat your updates like math problems, show every single step. But here's the truth. Leaders are not grading our process. They just want to know what the actual signal is or what the answer is. They don't want to play by play. They need to know three things. What's happening? Why does this matter? And what should we do next? And this is ultimately what it is that we need to be doing when it comes to how we communicate with these senior leaders. Misunderstanding number two, speaking up equals adding more value. Let me free you from this one. You do not need to speak in every meeting to be valuable because presence does not equal impact. The people who get remembered, they're not the loudest or the clearest. They're the ones who drop one line that cuts through the noise and moves the room forward. And speaking up, by the way, doesn't always mean a big statement. Sometimes it's like a well-timed joke that breaks through the tension. Sometimes it's building on an idea in Slack. Those are also moments that can help cut through that clarity. So then misunderstanding number three, leadership trusts people who solve problems. This one is sneaky because it feels true. You've probably been told, be the fixer, be the person who jumps in and gets it done. And yes, solving problems does matter, but the real power move is to frame the problem so clearly that the path forward becomes obvious. Look, anyone can clean up a mess, right? But leaders remember the person who saw it coming, laid out what's at stake, and invites them in early to make a smart decision. So these things may seem small, but together, this all changes how leadership sees us, right? And so our goal is to be strategic, clear, and have good presence, which all ladder back together. So real fast, I would love to get this question answered in the chat. When everyone is smart and capable, I'm sure many of us work at amazing companies where there are a lot of really smart people where we may face imposter syndrome. Why do you think leadership should trust you to lead? Put it in the chat. By the way, I love all the chat engagement. I'm 23 messages behind, so I'm going to look at the latest and we can go to the very top. And Jack, in meetings of multiple speakers, if you don't talk, it feels like they might forget you know. I mean, let's break that down, Jack, maybe in the Q&A. I really think it depends on the context of it and also like what it is that you're saying. If you're in there and you say something stupid, that's also like not the risk that you want to take. So we can talk a little bit more about that. Okay, clarity, I'm seeing that come up. Good judgment, ability to deliver results. Love that. Create more room for impact. Yep. Trust to save time. Yep. Move with velocity. I love all of that stuff. So in the interest of time, I'm going to move forward. This is how Jason and I think about it, right? You want to basically be the person that leadership sees as helping them make these decisions easier and making the outcomes better, right? Because ultimately then you make their life easier. This is how you want to be remembered. And it doesn't mean dumbing things down, by the way. It just means being really clear, the most useful, the one who always gets to the point, because that type of person gets invited back into the room. Let me give you a real example. My VP right now, she always taps the same person for these high stake projects, not because this person is flashy, not because this person is senior, they're actually pretty junior, but because every single time they make things easier for my VP. They explain things in a way that's clear, direct, and super decision ready. And some of you may be thinking, why should I make things so easy for leadership, right? I would be thinking that. It's like, shouldn't they be the ones figuring this out? They're the ones being paid the big bucks. Totally get that. I felt it. But here's the reality. Leaders are under pressure too. They have big goals, big OKRs that they need to hit. There is no a pip for them, right? Like if they don't hit it, usually they have to leave and there's no safety net that they have. And so they have to hit these expectations. When you make their job easier and help them hit those expectations, they remember that. And that ultimately is going to pay off for you. Okay, so with that, let's go into tactic number one for how we actually get this done. So be honest. How often do you over-explain because you want to sound smart or cover all your bases? I'm going to raise my hand. I've totally done that and I still do that sometimes. And it's one of those things that I catch myself doing and I have to stop. We've all been there. but clarity is greater than complexity every single time. Think about the last time that you skimmed maybe like a 3-paragraph Slack message and you still didn't even know what the ask was, right? That's what leaders feel when we overdo it. And that's the type of stuff that we want to not do. And we probably are over explaining because we're trying to sound smart. But in doing that, we bury the point, and leaders don't actually dig for this buried treasure. So when we over explain, we make it harder for them to understand us. And the second that they have to work too hard, they check out because let's be honest, leaders can sometimes be lazy. They want to be fed the answer. They want to be fed this information. And it's not that what you're saying isn't important. It's just that it's too much to process in that moment. So our job isn't to prove how much we know. It's just to make the decision or direction obvious to the person that we're speaking to. So our goal is to just give them a filter that they can use right away. Before we speak, let's ask ourselves, what's the most useful 10 seconds of this? Or what action am I taking? Or what action am I asking for them to take? Excuse me. And can I say this without like all of the backstory? Over the next few slides, we're going to give you a framework to replace over explaining. So know that that's to come. But this is just one mindset that I want us to all lean into, which is like we have to try to avoid this over explaining where we give people all that backstory. Okay, Jason, I'm going to pass it off to you for the next tactic.
Yeah, but before I dive into this tactic, I just want to build on something Sally said earlier was the key piece of clarity. Ethan and I teach another course for C-suite executives with Sue Bathanis. She's a CEO and executive coach, and she summarized the top leadership trait, and it's be clear. Be clear in your mission, vision, expectations, success metrics, and communication. And why this matters for this Zoom is that applies to everyone else as well, not just the senior leaders. It's your job as an individual leader or a people manager to also be clear upwards to these leaders. So I just want to build on that point. Okay, so the 30-second rule. Here's a phrase that Ethan has become kind of known for, and I want you to remember it. It's called be bright, be quick, be gone. That's it. That's the mental model you want when you're speaking with senior executives. So if we break each down, be bright. That's give me your core proposal and solution recommendation, followed by one big data point or insight. Be quick is do it concisely. Don't blabble. Remember, when you're talking with senior executives, they're smart. And they probably want to share their point of view with you. So give them space to do it. And then the final thing, be gone. This is where actually a lot of people mess up. If you have 15 minutes with an executive or even 30 minutes and you end 50% earlier, close it out. Give them that time back. Don't say, oh, hey, we have 10 more minutes. Let me talk to you about X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and my whole life. No. Be known as the person who could get things done earlier. Go out, get out of the room, go through your day and get it done. So be bright, be quick, be gone. Okay, we can get to the next slide because there's a good tactic here. Okay, tactic, AI. Use AI to augment your communication skills. This is a great prompt that Sally has featured on this slide. When you have a question or you have your prepared notes or speaking points going into a high stakes meeting, let's call it, write it down and then ask AI, help me cut this down. Cut it in half. Cut this 2-paragraph message that I just wrote into 3 sentences and see where it keeps the main points and then just nail those. So if you're not using this with AI, and you can use Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever, free tools, etc., it'd probably be good to use 2 or 3 different tools to see how it comes back to you. But start with this. Okay, we're good on this one.
I totally agree with you, Jason, right? And that exactly what you said, that's what they want because they're operating so quickly. So I totally agree with you. And honestly, with AI nowadays, you all, it just levels the playing field, right? If you come from like a background where you didn't grow up in America, freaking just put in, I work with like a bunch of Americans. Help me come up with a joke as I land this or like a good analogy. There are so many things that you can put into AI now that just levels the playing field. And that's why we should constantly be using it. Okay, so the second way for us to speak in a way that we can work better with leaders is around this framework around what, so what, now what. This is how we stop over explaining. If we've rambled through a meeting update and nothing, and we basically just get blank stares back, this is probably why we're over explaining and we're not saying in a way that resonates best with them. And leaders don't just want to hear what happened, right? Like they want to know, what does this mean? Why should I care? That's actually a really critical point. Jason talked a little about this with Ethan, but why should I care? That's really critical for them because they have so much going on. And the even more important thing then becomes, what do you need from me? Right? Like, why me? Am I here to unlock? Am I here because you need an opinion in order for you to cover your bases? We got to make that really, really clear. And if you're not giving them a reason to care, they're not going to care. And if you're not clear on the ask, they're not going to dig for it. They're just going to move on and you're never going to get what you need. And this is honestly where high performers stall out. They know the work is good, but they don't know how to communicate in a way that builds trust and drives that action. So this is what it is that we're thinking about. What is all about? How does it tie back to company goals? I might say, I work on things like our extended workforce. This is a key area of how we think about just the workforce overall for the company, and also a key area for we're thinking through where we can streamline more. That ties it back to company goals. The so what would be, this is also a hot area as it comes to regulations, and we want to make sure that we stay compliant with everything that's going on. That's what's at risk when you talk about regulations, compliance, all of that. And now it becomes, what do you need from them? This is where you go, we need your opinion. We need your approval. We need your something in order for us to move forward. I just sort of ad-libbed based off of a comment that someone was asking of what's like the 30-second rule and how we sort of use this together. But that's ultimately what it comes down to. What, by the way, a lot of people miss this. What is about, how does this tie back to a company objective? You could talk about what you're doing all day long, but if it doesn't tie back to a company objective, it doesn't signal to the leader why is it that they should care. And ideally, it's a company objective that they're also on the hook for. The so what becomes, what's at risk. Why do we say what's at risk? Because people care about losing things way more than they care about gaining. If you tell me I'm going to lose X amount of money, I'm probably going to care more about that. It's going to hit more and hurt more than I am gaining more money, right? And so you want to use psychology here. You want to lean into the risk. And then now what is all about, why should they care? Why am I coming to you? Why do I need your opinion? This is where it really becomes like the golden trifecta. So here's a quick example of how it works, right? You can see the original, it's sort of all jumbled together. And then the what, so what, now what? You see like campaign ROI is down 20%, which puts us off track with hitting our Q2 revenue target. Q2 revenue immediately signals to money. What do companies care about? They care about making money, and we are a resource to help them do so. So this ties it back to the high level. The so what becomes, what's at risk, right? We're going to miss revenue target by 10%. That's at risk. That's a huge thing that we don't want. And then finally, the now what becomes, what is it that we need from them? This is my recommendation. Tell me whether or not you're in alignment with this. And so one question for you, and I'm going to go fast just because I'm conscious of time. Jason, we probably should have made this an hour. I love this. I feel like you and I can spitball for so long. So put in the chat, which of these best follows the framework? A, B, or C? Yeah, I see from Peter, A. Yeah, Jack, A. Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit fast just because of time. But this is all about, how do we make it something simple for them? Do you see, like, we're immediately saying, like, the what is how we're talking about feature adoption, a key goal for Q2. Do you see that's so easy to say? Literally, we could say this impacts feature adoption and stop there. But once we say a key goal for Q2, that gives context for why this project is important, and it ties back to these larger things. If we need help doing this, put this into AI. Say, these are my company's top 10 objectives. This is what I'm working on. Help me figure out the what, so what, now what, to make sure that I tie back into like the high level company objective and the risk if we don't hit that. And then, okay, I'm going to pivot to you, Jason, just in terms of number 3, and then we can close it out.
Okay, yeah. So forecasting the problems. Okay, so there's 3 parts into this. We already spoke about inviting the executive strategic input. That's what you want, right? It's interesting. For a lot of my docs, I like to lead with the purpose, meaning what specific action are you looking for from the executive? Are you looking for alignment, a yes and no approval? Or are you looking for more input because you have a hotly debated topic that needs more discussion, right? So it's interesting. This slide, I know there's a big X and a big green. The important piece is to also use your judgment based on your relationship, standing, and credibility with the executives or leaders in the room, right? There are times where you only need to say your solution and say, I recommend this. this is what we are doing by this date. Let me know if you have problems. That's if you have strong standing, right? But if we pivot to the proactive green checkmark piece, it's you lead with what leverage do we want to pull before this becomes a bigger issue, right? So you're inviting them to give their input, but then you do a quick follow-up with the data points, right? This is the backing, right? This is the engagement is trending down 3% month over month. So they understand the context. You're reminding them of the context. And then the business impact. Always tie it back to the key metric. And this 99.9% if you work for a for-profit company is tied to something about revenue, sales, saving costs, efficiency, right? That's what these leaders care about. So hit it at that core. There are the primary metrics and there's secondary metrics. Just go for the primary metrics. Don't waste time on this. But that's the quick spiel there.
Yeah, and I think what Jason just talked about, that's critical. If it comes down to saving time, if it comes down to money, if it comes down to also just like employees, is it easy to hire? Is it not? All of this becomes important. I think Wes Cow talks about this, where she's like, what's the question behind the question, right? Usually it comes down to money, it comes down to brand perception, it comes down to legal, it comes down to hiring, all these types of things. There's really just 5 of them. I can't remember all 5 off the top of my head, but we can follow up an email on that. Okay, so here is a summary of what we talked about. This is our lightning lesson, so it's sort of like our TED Talk version. But these are the 3 things that we think will help you grow your career and help you specifically grow your career by learning how to work better with leaders. Look, Jason works with Ethan. He's the ex-VP of Amazon. That's like a really high senior level. I work with VP of Marketing Operations. I work with a lot of senior directors, VPs, all of that. These people don't have time. The more that I can make their life easier, which is me putting effort in, the better off I'm going to be, because they're going to give me better answers. They're going to trust me, and they're going to give me opportunities where I can lead bigger and bigger projects. So we covered how to do so by filtering out the noise, by speaking with precision, and also framing problems like a leader. When we do that, that's the best way for people to go like, you know what, Jason's my guy. Jason's the person who knows how to speak to me in a way that I quickly get it, and I can trust him to move forward on these types of things. So if any part of the session hit home, if you found yourself thinking, that's me, that's why I've been stuck, I think I saw in the ping chat how to think about communication, we can definitely dive deeper into that, then this is your next step, thinking about these 2 courses. Jason and Ethan run this lovely course, which I've taken, Stuck at Senior Manager, How to Break Through to Executive, that's running this month or next month, April 26th and May 29th. And then I'm also running a course focused really on the mid-career person, someone who's in that L5 sweet spot, where it's all about how do we figure out how we help you operate in a way that helps you reach that next level, right? At least for me, the reason I created this is because I spent years doing great work and getting overlooked. And until I learned how to speak the language of leadership, how to make my work visible, by the way. So we talked a little bit about communication, but visibility is a whole new thing, and how to show up like someone wanted to take a bet on, not just today, but in 5 years. That's the unlock there, right? And I'm tired of watching less qualified people get ahead. And if you are too, then make sure to check out that course. With Ethan's course, actually, Jason, do you want to do a little plug for Ethan and your course?
Sure, I'll do it super quick. It's like we have over 1,000 alumni. It's rated high. It's not just for senior managers. We get a lot of ambitious senior ICs or ICs, maybe the equivalent of a L6 at a big tech company. But the key piece is, if you want to know the expectations of a executive, this is the precipice of the course. And then also what that promotion process looks like and how to run it with the goal to win and get promoted. But yeah, as you'll see here, we're also adding the de facto leading AI adoption bonus module. Working on it now. It's very big. It's very robust, and it's interesting. It's a good forcing function to get me and Ethan to use AI more as well. So, one thing I wanted to add earlier. So the other piece is always include your opinion and recommendation. These execs don't just want someone giving them a status report. You need to show your judgment, right? That is how you build trust. You build trust by delivering consistent results, but also showing that you have the judgment at the next level. The judgment to make a complex, maybe ambiguous business decision. The judgment to look at 3 very compelling recommendation options and choosing a path and being clear why you chose that path. So always add your opinion. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I love that. You have to make them remember you, right? And ideally that
Yes.
opinion is going to be something that ties back to helping them achieve their goals. So totally align with that. I love jamming with you, Jason. This is awesome. Okay. So Jason and I are going to jam for a little bit longer. Let's go through some questions. Do you want to put it in the chat? I don't know if we can go all the way to the beginning. So maybe if you have a question from before, just put it like back, just reping it and then we'll go through it. But we would love to chat. By the way, I love all these LinkedIns being sent around. Please connect with me and Jason as well. Okay, Anna Z. Any tips for the scenario where some leaders strongly prefer details and others like the TLDR, especially when presenting to all of them at once? Ooh, I have a thought, but I want to hear yours first, Jason, and I'll build on yours.
Yep. So let's say you're in an in-person meeting, it could be Zoom, and they're all together at once. My recommendation is nail the TLDR with your main recommendation point with one data, and just end it and say, I have more context if you need it, happy to share.
I love that. So what I would say, Anna, sort of building on what Jason is saying is not everything has to happen in that room, right? There's a lead up to meetings and there's also a post recap post meetings. So if you have this audience, some likes details, some want the TLDR, I would be thinking about how are you utilizing a pre-read email? And the reason I'm getting so tactical is because we don't need to live in theory. We just need to know step 1, step 2, how would we approach this? In my pre-read email, I would put in details there talking about to make it really crisp. But then I would also have details. Have your deck in there. Make sure that you have something that's marked pre-read. Make sure you haven't marked something that's discuss. Make it really easy for the receiver to actually action on it. But that's a great way and a great cheat to help you add in details. And then when you go into that room, who's the decision maker? Whoever the decision maker is, you better be flexing to how they're dancing. If there's someone who wants a lot of detail, then you maybe provide that detail. If there's someone who wants that TLDR, then maybe you provide that TLDR. But this is where you have to think about who's actually the one who you need that opinion on, who's actually the one who you need that decision on. And if it's something where you need it all, maybe it doesn't all happen in that one meeting, because that's going to lead to too much discussion and a lot of side conversations, and you're not going to get to where you want. How do you break it up? I talk about this in my course, but there's the meeting before the meeting, right? This all happens. Allies in that meeting who say good things about their work, which then helps drive their things forward. That is all about the strategy to Oh no, hold on. Did I lose everyone? I think
I can still hear you.
Okay.
But I can't see you, nor can I see the screen.
Oh shoot. Okay.
Oh,
well,
now I can see you.
Okay, perfect. I have no idea what happened. Okay, thanks for staying on with me, you all.
Yeah. Let's keep rolling. We don't need the screen.
Okay, so we did Anna's, right? Okay, Jack, could you give an example of a 30-second rule for a recent task you did? Jason, you want to take it and then I'll go too?
I mean, Ethan and I do it all on email every day. The thing with email and a senior executive is always assume they're reading it on their mobile phone. So you cannot send blocks of text or paragraphs. Use the art of simple 1 to 2 sentences broken up by lines and then bullet points. But yeah, here's a real example. We got proposed to switch one of our course platform payment systems from Stripe to their own native one. And I had to quickly understand what's the benefit. So I just told Ethan, look, it's a no-brainer to do this as a test. Here's 3 bullet points why. And basically in this scenario, all we're thinking of is what's the potential ROI, what's the potential lift, and what's the potential lift slash maintenance, right? The amount of work. And then 3, this is important. What is the fallback plan if this goes to goes downhill? and what's the worst that could happen. With those three, he's just like, yeah, let's do it. No brainer, turn it on. His
Yep.
response was turn it on.
So, and that's like, you'll see emails are so short, right? That's what they do. The responses, all of that. We spend so much time on them. What I would also say that Jason did really well there is that he put his opinion in. It's a no-brainer, right? Because that immediately signals, okay, here's like how Jason is thinking about it. And then this is his almost like supporting points for how he does it. But this is where, like Jason said, lead with your opinion. So the one that I gave Jack earlier was around just like temp badges or something, or like something around regulations. Here's a project I'm working on now. We're talking about spend taxonomy as we think about all the ways that we spend money at the company I work for. And ultimately, this ties back to how do we make sure that we are classifying money in the right way so that we see where the investment areas could be. That would be like my what, right? And we can make it even more simple there. The so what becomes our goal is to get this really clear so that we understand where potential areas we are underspending and where areas that we're overspending so that we can hit the targets that we have. And then finally, the now what would be, we're seeing misclassification. These are my 3 steps. Are you in alignment? Like that's a little bit longer, probably than 30 seconds. I might need to put that into like AI, but that's like a great way for you to quickly see what are the things I'm trying to say? How do I make it tied back to a big goal? How do I talk through like what's at risk here? And then how do I then give that opinion? Jason's was exactly the same, right? He's like this, the low lift or like, how do we make sure that this is something where it's a no-brainer? You talk through like what's at risk. So all of this kind of stuff, it sort of all ties back together. So S. Roy asks, which one would be your favorite resource, book, or blog? You know what I would say, and I'd love to get your opinion, Jason. There's books out there. I would say use AI, right? Because no book is going to be able to talk about your particular scenario, your particular situation. You know what will is AI. You tell them, I want to speak like this person, maybe the author of X book. Help me like use this framework to help make it even more crisp in my scenario. And then you just like ask AI those types of questions. Pick your chat, like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whatever. Pick your AI tool of choice, ask those questions, and that's a great way for you to like get what you need. The other flex is you need to practice. Practice is key because you might feel nervous in that moment when they're staring at you or when they're flinching or like when they're like pursing their lips or maybe they're like tilting their head. You might feel nervous and you might be thrown off, but you have to practice too.
Yeah, I would say, so number one, use AI. Number two, if you want to see how communication can be incompressible, follow Naval Ravikant.
Mm-hmm.
He distills a decade of wisdom in 2 sentences. It's incredible. So, next one.
Okay, I think the next one is it Jorge? Or is it so I'm trying to, I don't know. Zoom chat for me always moves. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but
Yes,
have a
Jorge.
hard. Jorge. Okay, awesome. You want to ask your question live, Jorge?
Sure. How do you have two leaders that have conflicting views? Let's say you're in the middle and you need to find a solution. How do you align those conflicting views?
There's a lot that go into there's a lot that goes into this, right? Because it's so case by case. My perspective, well, it's never equal your position with either leader, right? Right? Do you report to one over the other? Are you closer to one over the other? So if I had to summarize it, the key question is, where do you stand? Where does the data and anecdotes that you have tell you? And then what is best for the customer and the business in the end? I would use those 3 tenets as the lens to make your decision judgment call.
I think I cut out. So thank you, Jason, for jumping in. Plus, I don't even know what you said, Jason, but +1 to everything that you said.
It honestly, okay. So I index high on this, but it doesn't really matter what those leaders' viewpoints are in, like to a point, right? Ignore those. Focus on what's best for the customer and the business, and use your judgment, and then collect their views, and then make a proposal. Right? Don't let their views bias what you think is best for the business and customer. Is the end all.
The other thing I would say, just in terms of conflicting views, it becomes like, what's the goal, right? Because you might have 2 very different goals. If you're bringing in a sales leader and then you're bringing in like a PM, they might have 2 very different goals. I know Ethan gives an example of that in his course, but like it sort of becomes, what is the goal? Because if you have different goals, you're always going to have the conflicting views. And so you have, to Jason's point, your tactic there is to find what is the commonality, which is doing the best for the customer. I think that's pretty easy to say. All of us in tech or any other company, we always focus on the customer, but that's a good solve for then how do you think through data points of what's good for the customer? And you do it in a way, by the way, that doesn't put your neck like out on the line, because the last thing you want to be seen as is someone who's opportunistic or overeager. That is a reputational disaster. So the more that you lean into data, whether it's qualitative comments from customers, whether it's quantitative numbers from a survey, that helps you lead the conversation, because that is not going to be left for interpretation. And the more you can do that in the most way that you can be seen as someone helping lead to the answer versus telling people the answer, the better off you're going to be. Cool. Jack, how could we leverage better storytelling despite of doing same work we are doing today, essentially without much effort? I think the question here is like, how do we take into account some of the storytelling tips? You can even see this on YouTube, which is like the specificity. By the way, you know who does it really well is Taylor Swift, right? Look at her songs. She talks about like a red scarf and like the autumn leaf, like that specificity that you care about. So if that's like one way of doing it. I'm going to sound like such a broken record. I say put it in AI. What are the storytelling elements that you want to incorporate? Or you could say, what are the storytelling elements? And then you put in your talking points and you say, how do I make this succinct? How do I make this ready for a leadership executive view? And then how do I incorporate storytelling to make sure that this lands even more? That's my tip. But Jason, I'd love to get your perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting. This question, to me, the key point is without much effort.
Yeah.
So I kind of laugh at that. So there's one part of me where I think, okay, well, if you want to be really good at something, it does require some amount of effort. But at the same time, if you don't want a shortcut, the answer is simple. It is AI, right? Use the tool to do the work for you. What can help is creating your own custom GPTs. We created an Ethan Evans GPT based on all his videos and his 100,000 plus, written posts. And now it serves as basically a personal executive coach. You can do the same for different tasks or personas, right? I know someone, she leads marketing at a company, and she has it for different customer profiles, ICPs, right? Write me an email for this target, write me an email for this target, etc. So you could do that. That's the without much effort. It takes a lot of effort to build them up front, but then it just becomes easygoing from there.
1,000%, right? GPT, I work for Google, so I have to give Gemini Gem a plug. That's easy too. They're the same thing, different companies, but I totally agree with you. Okay, so I think there was a question around, while trying to be concise, isn't there a risk of not giving enough context and ending up not communicating? So my take on this, and then I realize I'm reading the question, Jason, I want you to also be able to give to go first so that we can piggyback off of one another. In my mind, that's the dance, right? Like this is what it means to be more and more senior, is how do you dance with knowing the context, but then also knowing what it is the other person needs to know from you in order for them to action on something. Because let me tell you, if you're communicating with them, they better like have an action to take. If you're just saying something interesting, that's something interesting, right? Like that could be an email, that could be like that doesn't require you to meet face to face or require them to action on anything. So if you're trying to get them to respond to you in some way, your goal should be, what do I need from them? What do they like? What would help? What would they need to know and give me? I think I said that backwards, but you get sort of the sentiment I'm going here with. And then from there, understanding what is in the context that you provide. But I feel like this is the ultimate dance. I'm going to say it again. AI is a great way for you to sort of like massage this a little bit more, but this is where you have to know your leader. This is where you have to know your project. You have to know like what you need from them. And you have to figure out what is that trifecta. Jason, would love to get your points.
Yeah, I would say this is the part where you end it by saying, if you need more context, I'm happy to share. And just say that, when you say a sentence like that, it also shows confidence, right? It signals a couple of things. It signals I've made my main point, and it signals I'm happy to share more. And I want, like the slides that Sally had, I'm inviting your thoughts, which I'm going to guarantee you a lot of executives, they usually have very quick thoughts and POVs that they want to share. So just get at it, right? Remember, the purpose of these meetings is a lot of time it's to agree on a very specific action, or to dive deeper into truth seek on what the right action is, because you don't know. Uh, the thing to keep in mind with executives is they're always context switching and altitude shifting, right? Context switching meaning they're jumping from different parts of the business. Different direct reports and teams want their attention. And then altitude shifting, they have to think about the macro version of the business, what's happening on the broader landscape, but also the micro details. Now, the candid truth is executives are more removed from the minute details. That's where you come in with your data, insights, and judgment. That's what they're looking for you to do, right? So I would just end it by saying, hey, happy to share more context if you want. Let me know.
1,000%, right? Like 1,000%. By the way, we didn't get into this because this is a whole new type of like lightning lesson, but that's your superpower. You are boots on the ground, right? Like lean into that. You may not be in that like leadership meeting, but use your superpower being boots on the ground to get you into that type of meeting. I'll share this one example we can go on is I used to work on consumer campaigns. I was specifically in marketing on like Google Home. So we competed against Amazon Echo all the time. So we can talk a little bit about that, Jason, offline, just between Amazon and Google. But they were talking about like, what's the big TV ads that we put out there, right? Who's going to be the agency that creates them, all this stuff. I was invited into this room, even though it was all like VP senior directors at that level discussing this because it's sort of contentious. I was in that room because I owned the freaking calendar. I knew how long it took in order for us to like get something live. I knew when we needed to get things live to hit the media dates that we had, all of that kind of stuff. When you know the details, you get invited into rooms. So know the details. Don't just focus on like talking up without any type of context. Make sure that you know the details so that when they do rely on you, you can prove it. Okay, I think there was a question of how it's difficult to get time with leaders. How do we know their pulse? I'm going to let you go, Jason, because I've been speaking first, and then I'll follow up on yours.
Yeah. Okay, couple ways. Number one, observe them. Use the power of observation. See what questions they ask people. Look at their vibe. See how they answer. Do they always start with a data point? Do they start with a story? And see how concise they are. That's number one. So observe the leader direct. Number two, observe their direct reports, or their chief of staffs, or their technical advisors, or their EAs, the people who have a lot of time with them. See how they communicate. And then the third one is, if you're really unsure and you can't use observation because maybe you're not in the room, so this is your first time, ask people ahead of time, right? And you could go up front and say, hey Sally, I have a meeting with so and so coming up. It's important to me because of these two reasons. Anything you think I should know about how this leader likes to operate to make it more effective. And you can also, now sometimes the people will be like, yeah, I'll help you. But you can also say, you also need to show, some people will be a little bit more transactional. So you also need to show what's in it for them, right? So it could be you're collaborating on a project together and you want to give that update. And you'll be like, hey, Como was an integral part of this too. And here's a short sentence why. Something like that. But that's how I would do it.
1,000%, right? Like this is where your network, I think what Jason's also getting to is this is where your network becomes important. You yourself, you're one person. You can probably accomplish so much. You probably know so much. But if you lean into your network, and you should have a wide variety of network. Jason talked about chief of staff. I think admin is also another key one, which I know he also agrees with. There's like a lot of different types of people out there, and they will give you tidbits that help you understand what does the other person care about and how do I position my work to support what they care about. So 1,000% on all of that stuff. Okay, so Nicole asked, how do you advise handling getting approval? Some decisions can't be made right then. Do you ask, please provide by XY date? So I'm going to give you sort of a long story and then a short answer. The ultimate part is no one just wants to be said, hey, can you approve this? Right? I'm sure the number of times someone comes to Ethan about that, or my VP with like, you've never heard about this project before, but can you approve this? They're going to have so many damn questions. That's not the way to think about it. What I think about is almost like your stages and gates. In order for like a decision to go to a VP, who are the other people who've had to decide on it beforehand? And you might be thinking about that already, Nicole, but also when do you involve that VP so that it's not like the first time they're seeing it, right? Because you want to give them some context, make them feel like they've already provided that opinion, pull them in. This is a whole psychology part of it. You want to make them feel like they're part of that solution. Figure out where is the stages and gates where you pull in that person who needs to make that decision. So then when you actually do come to them with, hey, this is the timeline, we need to make a decision by X because this is what's at stake if we don't, they're going to be more likely to have the context they need in order for them to make that decision and feel comfortable with it. Jason, I'm going to pass it off to you. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say if you are the document or meeting owner, this is your responsibility to be very clear on what you need in that moment. We need approval in this meeting because of this date or deadline, right? Or we need approval by a future date, and the purpose of this meeting is to sharpen our thinking, and we will follow up by X date with the decision. Now, you can also be very bold and say things like, I mean, this is a little bit a little bit of a bolder statement, but you could say, we are making this decision by X date. If you have any issues, bring them up now. You know, you use your judgment when you think that's right. But you know, the key piece is because people always ask, how do I stand out? Part of how you stand out is by being a bold leader and proposing bold solutions to things, right? That's the change agent part of your career, where you will showcase your innovative side and your willingness to go into, you know, hard situations and see if it works out. Now you have to build that trust so that people can say, yeah, this is a bold decision, but Sally's the right person or Nicole's the right person. But that's the short answer to it.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like we're scratching the surface on a lot of this stuff, Jason. I feel like we could just spend so much time like diving into all of this. So, I mean, I love all these questions.
It's fun.
It's so fun. I feel so inspired on like a Friday morning when usually you'd be like, oh, I can't wait for the weekend. So it's awesome. I think those are the last questions. Tell me if I'm right or wrong, because my Zoom is a little wonky right now. But if there are any live questions, feel free to unmute and jump in as well. Jason, you got a question?
Oh, let me see. I was scrolling up. How do you practice what? Jack, tell me, how do you practice what? Jack might be typing. I actually communication with exec. Okay, so how do you practice it? Well, number one, you could do the reps, right? You get in the meetings, you do it a lot, but you don't want to fumble that ball there. So what I like to do is you can practice a lot of public speaking in more quote unquote safe areas, right? You can give panel talks to a affinity group, a local high school, your colleges, you know, people who would say, yes, we want your advice, right? Okay, so let's see. Assume you're an engineering leader, not a product person, so you like to go into details. Okay, yeah, that's great. People might see you as a detail expert, but state the clear point. There's the balance of knowing the nitty-gritty details, which are important, but also knowing how to communicate the important parts to the people in the room. So you have to balance those two skills. But that's where it comes in and says, this is my perspective. Here's the big data point. And then just invite them to ask you more questions, right? Think about an interview. If you go an interview, you don't want to be speaking for 20 minutes long after you get asked the first question. That's probably a very big red flag, right? The interviewer is probably like, dang, this person just talks and talks and doesn't want anyone's opinion. You give short, concise answers, and then you allow the interviewer to go 5 whys deep. Same thing with this. Remember, we're talking about communicating to executives. These people are in their positions for a reason, right? I mean, yeah, okay, there's some reasons why people get into their positions, but assume they're smart, assume they're capable, and assume they're curious. So give them the breathing room to ask.
Jason, you didn't ask me this, but what I'd also say is, someone said, practice like in a town hall meeting. Yes, but also like practice when you get coffee. Why do you like oat milk over almond milk? Right? Like, what are the low stakes ways that you can get your reps in like just common things that you do? Maybe you drive a Toyota, or maybe you drive a Porsche. Why is a Porsche better than Toyota? Why is a Toyota better than a Porsche? Why do you like a van over a Mini, over like an SUV? Whatever it would be, figure out like how to incorporate this into your day-to-day, because that gets you the reps in. And then you'll start to see what are ways that I'm speaking that people resonate more with. And then you take that and you bring it into that exec types meeting too.
I love the phrase, you don't become a good sailor in calm waters. So that's where the reps come in, right? It's one thing to speak in front of a mirror by yourself and it's a safe space and you're in your pajamas. Okay, sure. But make it a real situation, right? And yeah, start off with high school kids and college kids. That's great because they're always seeking advice and they usually ask very thoughtful questions that make you think. But you know, the skill of being able to speak on the fly is a skill that just comes with experience, reps in real situations. So put yourself out there. Okay, I'm reading Jack's follow-up. Cultural differences. Oh yeah, 100%. This comes up all the time. Well, okay, asking personal questions, you have to use your judgment when it's appropriate, right? But yeah, there's always time for some banter and get to know each other. But it also depends on okay, there are cultural differences, but there's also the culture of your company and what you see. You know, it's pretty obvious sometimes the people who make it to the highest levels at these companies. What are they doing? Right? How are they presenting themselves? Again, the power of observation. Let me think. Let me see. Let's see.
When I say go for it,
Sally.
Jason.
No, just go ahead. I was just gonna
well, I was gonna say, like, when it comes to personal questions, it doesn't have to be, oh, like, you know, did you vote for Trump or not, right? Like, it doesn't have to get to that level of detail. It could be like, wow, I really love rainy days, right? Like, what do you think? Or I'm someone who likes to ride my bike twice a week. Like, get into some stuff that doesn't feel so high stakes. One of these guys on my team, he's so good with these little jokes, right? Like, someone was talking about how they might get subpoenaed because they're doing this anyway, their email might get subpoenaed or something, not because they did anything wrong, but because like they're on the hook for this thing. And he types in the chat, that's a real resume builder, right? And it's nothing to do with the topic, but it's just like some way to bring in some type of humor. So think about, like, what are some personal ways that you can embed it in? If they have kids, if they have dogs, they have a wife or a husband or a partner, like, it's so easy to remember those names and help bring some of that in too.
Okay, so I will add, because we're talking about, like, you know, relationships. Jack's question is a good one. It's a very common one. Work, relationships, what's that balance? Ethan we had a good discussion about something. Ethan basically said, listen, if all you do is work, you will be seen, and you're not a genius. You're not a top 0.001% genius who's gonna 10x the business and build us $1 billion. Let's say you're not that person. Then you might be seen as just a tool, a very reliable, consistent tool, but you won't go beyond that because you don't have that relationship of trust with those executives. Remember, a lot of these executives, they have a pretty strong bench of talent. That's why the competition is high. So you need to have the reputation as someone who delivers results, but also the trust. Can I trust this person to go into battle with me on this new ground, you know, of this new project or this new ambiguous, complex situation? Or, hey, I'm thinking about leaving my current role in this company, switching internally to start this new crazy project that could be make or break for the career. Will this person follow me? Sometimes that's what a lot of leaders think, you know? So that's where the relationship building really comes in. And yeah, as Sally was saying, you want to find common ground. And what's nice in some of these meetings is have, like, you know, to be an interesting person, you first have to be interested. And it doesn't take much. It could be a couple of things. It could be travel, it could be snorkeling, it could be chess, it could be whatever. It could be bird watching. But when you're sometimes in the hallways or 5 minutes before the Zoom officially starts, that's where you could insert some of this. Okay, here's a real example. A lot of people ask, how are you doing? How's your day going? How's your morning? Instead of replying with the standard, oh, it's going great. I had a great morning. Oh yeah, how are you doing? Anyone can say that. Insert something super interesting about you. So let's say I'm like, hey, Jack, how's your morning going? If Jack said something like, Oh, it was great because I was bird watching and saw my favorite bird, the blue something. I'd be like, oh, what? That's interesting. And then let's say we get cut off because the meeting starts, but that kind of sticks, right? Or if Jack says, oh, I'm really excited for my trip coming up to Bora Bora or Tokyo or whatever, right? And it's my first time or it's my 10th time. You want to give these little nuggets that people can latch on. I'll stop there.
I think that's it. Thank you all so much. This was awesome. This is so cool. So we're going to send this recording, and we're also going to have another lightning lesson that Jason and I are doing as well. So look out for that one, and we'll send that in the recap email. Thank you all.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you, Sally, too.
Thank you, Jason. High five, man. We did it. By the way, it's really early for Jason right now, so thank goodness he's here. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, yeah, it was fun. I enjoy it. Great questions.
Yes, thank you all for participating so much. Adios, y'all. Thank you.